This is Gemara Metziah Daf Dalid, and today's share has been dedicated as an incredible schos refuah shlema for Friedel Miriam Bas Sarah B'siyata Dishmaya. The ultimate schos ha'Torah should continue to bring Friedel Miriam Bas Sarah complete refuah shlema. Baruch Hashem, miraculous literal improvement already has been seen, and hopefully with this schos ha'Torah, a complete refuah shlema could be had. And we're holding at the end of the third parak a monumental day in the world of Daf, as we'll be beginning the famed parak Hazav in a few moments. Before we get there, let's just wrap up the third parak. We learned the Mishnah on the bottom of Mem Gimel and Beis, just to remind ourselves one quick time. Is one obligated with the intent to utilize an item? Bishami says yes. Basil says no until you actually use the item. If you tilted the barrel and you took revius, vinishra and it broke in a mishalem el revius for that revius that you took. Higbia, but if you lifted up the barrel, the not to revius vinishra, and then the fact that you lifted up the entire barrel, the halacha is mishalem Demei Kula. Just one very interesting detail is when the Mishnah says Hachoshev, one thinks, one intends to utilize the item. We would think that the translation of that is thought, intent, kavana. Rashi, which we read at the end of this year, but let's just point out what Rashi is saying. Rashi says, Omar bifnei edim. Rashi translates that when the Mishnah says Chayshev means to say it, and Taisa speaks this out as well. Dibor means you spoke it out. Now there are Rishonim that argue, but that is just an interesting detail to begin the day. Says the Gemara as we turn over to Mem Daled Amud Aleph B'na Hani Mili. Where do we know this din from? Says the Gemara D'Tanu Rabbanan. We learned in the pasuk, Al Kol Dvar Pesha, says the pasuk, for all Pesha, for all negligence. From here says the Gemara, Beisham Yamrim Lam Shechayv Al Machshava Kemaisa. Shame learns that not only is one obligated for actually utilizing the item, but even for the mere machshava, or the dibur, we should call it. Says Beishami is chayiv. Beiseloimrim no inu chayiv achishach bayad. So you actually use it. Shenemrim leishach yadai b'mleches reiyu. Amrlam Beisham the Beisilel. So Beishami says Beisilel akvanem rakod var pesha. Very good. Beisilel have a pasuk. Im leishach yadai. What about the pasuk of v'aloikval kol var pesha? Amrlam Beisilel Beishami look for nemrim leishach yadai b'mleches reiyu. So Beisilel responds, "What about my pasuk?" Says the Gemara, "Came out to Amar Kol Devar Pesha. Shiach Alein Liu Elohu. Amar Lavda Shulchay Minayin Tam Amar Kol Devar Pesha." So Beishami responds, Beisil responds, that Kol Devar Pesha comes to include other people, not necessarily including a machshava, says Beisil, but even including other people in the obligation together with the Shomer. Continues the Gemara, Hita as a chavis, if he tilted the barrel, Amar Rav Leishanu Ela Nishvira. Aval Echmitza, if it turns sour, then Mishalei Meskula, you do indeed have to pay for the entire barrel. My time Agir Didei Odahani Le. So Rava teaches a chiddush that when the Mishnah said that for tilting the barrel, you only have to pay for the loss of the item that you took, that's only if the loss was via the barrel break. But if the barrel turns sour, then says Rava, your removal of your cup of wine, we'll call it, could have potentially caused the entire barrel to turn sour. It's giri delay, it's your arrows, and therefore says Rava, you are chayev for the whole barrel. And the final case of the Mishnah was Igbia v'natal imenu. Amar Shmolo natal mamish. When the Mishnah said natal, it didn't mean he actually took, but rather, elakive nishegbia, once you pick it up, lital to take it, avlishlo natal, even without actually taking it, it is enough. So the Gemara here now ends this parak with opening up really a large sugya, something that we've discussed already. It sounds like Shmuel holds that shlichas yad, utilizing the item, doesn't actually have to cause a loss to the item. And that's what Shmuel holds from the time that you picked it up, even before you actually took the wine, you're going to be chayiv. Amri says the Gemara, loy, shiny hacha dinicha lei, that they have a achav kula, basis laharavis. This case is different. It's not that Shmuel normally would hold that you're chayiv if there's no loss. But over here, you need the wine to help the wine. And that's the reason why Shmuel holds you're chayiv even before actually taking the wine. So what about in the case of a wallet? Ma'u, what do we say? Do we say that when it comes to wine, the wine is not unless there's other wine there? Like Shmuel just taught us that when it comes to wine, that the cup is a basis. You want the entire barrel. Aval Zuzo, when it comes to cash, mintar, the dollar in your wallet has nothing to do with the other dollar. Or maybe not, or maybe the watching of a wallet is different than a watching of a wallet full of money is different than the watching of a single coin. And therefore, when you have a full wallet of money, you're going to watch it better. So in some level, the money there is indeed, quote unquote, helping this coin because you watch this coin better. If I give you a quarter, you don't watch it so well. But if you give you a wallet with $100 and a quarter, then you would indeed watch it well. And it responds to Gemara Teiku. We got to wait for Mashiach to answer up Rav Ashi's Shaila. Hadron aloch hamafkid. We should do an incredible chazara of this wonderful third perek of Hamafkid b'siyata d'shmaya. And with that, we foray into the famed, difficult perek of Hazav. And I heard an incredible line that just like as we grow older, we have to reorient ourselves with a lot of the chumash that we learned when we were younger. Similar with certain parakim, yes, perek Hazav is a difficult perek. It deals with interest and the like. But number one, how many businessmen that this is their terminology, this is the language that they talk in. So maybe when this perek was learned in a yeshiva setting was difficult, but maybe as one grows older, and even more so, or an additional, I should say, there's also the fact that once you've gone through half of Shas, then there's a higher barometer, and we could hopefully conquer and make understanding of this difficult perek. So there's just one word of introduction that we're going to give, and that is actually two details. Number one is that even though in our perhaps vernacular we view kesef as the quintessential item to be kindness something, we buy things all day with money. Through the lens of the Torah, that's not so true. Kesef is only a kinyan dirabanan. That's number one. Number two is a general kinyan is affected via mishicha, via pulling the item, picking up the item. And now with that understanding, the item that you're picking up, the item that you're pulling is always going to be called the payri, is always going to be called the merchandise. And then there's the payment that one makes, that's called the kesef. So there's the kesef, which is that which you have to pay for the item. And then there's the item that you're buying, that is called the pri. So if I'm buying this drink from you, so when I pick up, I pull this drink, then what happens? I am now obligated to pay you whatever we made up for this drink. So via the Mashiach on the payri, if I do a Mashiach on the car, on the watch, if I do Mashiach on the computer, then I am obligated to pay the kesef. With that, hopefully, the Mishnah will go smoothly. Hazav, the gold, koine esa kesef, doing a Mashiach on the gold. If I pick up gold, I'm koine esa kesef, then the silver is acquired, meaning I now have to pay you for that which I took. But in the reverse, ha-kesef, picking up the kesef, einoi koines azov, does not make him have to pay the gold. And again, this has to do with the fact which item is the payri, which item is the merchandise, and which item is the payment for the merchandise. And we'll take a moment, we'll look in Rashi. The truth is, this detail will become clearer as we move through the parak. But Rashi says that l'keach dinar zav tivuin b'dinrei kasef v'nasan dinrei zav mishichas hazav. That's the line. The mishicha on the gold, the kinyan on the gold, kaines hakasef lebal hazav v'nischayiv lo yizeh mishekabel dinrei zav. Lo says loy dinrei kasef eino yochol achzor. That line in Rashi that we just highlighted in blue, that line is really the aside of the entire Mishnah. You have gold which I am buying. When I pick up your gold, my silver is now acquired to you. What does that mean? That means I'm obligated to pay you. That means that if this bar of gold was $10,000, when I pick up the gold, now I am obligated to give you that $10,000. But not in the reverse. Just one line at the end of Rashi also adds on that we're going to see that we're going to learn how Mashiach from the Torah. Some say it's the Rabbanan, and we're going to get there. Continuing the Mishnah, the Choshes Kohen is like Hasef, doing a Mashiach, pulling the copper obligates me to pay this silver, but the reverse, inferior monies, again, because inferior money, for all intents and purposes, is what we would call a peri, a coin that is no longer in circulation, is not called cash, but rather is called merchandise. So if I do a Mashiach on Mois Arois, now I am obligated to give you Yafais, which is regular currency. But in the reverse, Yafais in a Kanai as Arois. Asimon, which is a coin which is the tsura on it is rubbed out. Kainas hamatbeya is the peri, is the merchandise that is been doing Mashiach on it. I'm obligated to give the coins. V'hamatbeya and the kainas hasimoin. Metaltalin, and again, this line in the Mishnah really brings out the whole Yesod as well. Kainin es hamatbeya. If I do a Mashiach on metaltalin, any movable object, I do Mashiach on your watch that I want to buy. Now you are kind of my coins, meaning I am obligated to pay you for that item. Whereas in the reverse, if I pay you the money, matbeya, eina koines a metaltalin. By doing a Mashiach on the matbeya, it's not going to obligate the other person to give him the metaltalin. Again, very simple. If I want to buy your watch, if you take my money, that doesn't make you obligated to give me the watch, because it only goes that by doing the Mashiach, doing the kinyan, doing the act of acquisition on the merchandise, on the peri, on the item that's being acquired, then the payment is obligated to be paid. Zaklal, machlekes, whether we add those words in the Mishnah, kol ha-metaltalin koinin zeh ezeh. All metaltalin, all movable objects are acquired one to another. Now what we're discussing is no longer with the world of one item is the peri and one item is the kesef, but rather both items are metaltalin. Rashi towards the end of the Amud speaks out whether we're talking about chalipin, that you exchange one for another, that once one of them is drawn, is pulled by the friend, the other person is obligated to give the other item, and he can no longer back out. Kol metaltikon is a ketzat. If I do a Mashiach, if I pull your apples, lo nasan le'mais, and I don't pay you, I was obligated to pay you. So I still can't back out. If you give the money, then again, the exact same Yesod we've been learning the whole time in the Mishnah. That metaltalin is koinim zeh, but by giving the money, does not obligate the other person to give the payros. So you're able to back out. Meaning, if I give you cash and you decide you don't want to sell me your watch, you don't have to give it to me. But concludes the Mishnah, Avol Amru Misha Bara Mashidara Mabul. But they say, says Chazal, he who paid back to people in the times of the flood and Midara Flaga, again, referring to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who paid back those in the times of the Mabul Dara Flaga, the people that were spread all out, Hashem will pay back. Someone who doesn't stand by his word. So we're seeing here in the Mishnah that there's two levels, and really the entirety of Cheshem Mishpat, not the entirety, but many dinim are built upon this premise. There's that which we call an obligation, a chiyuv. When I do a kinyan on your metaltalin, I am mechuyav. You could take me to court. I'm obligated to pay you cash. But in the reverse, if I give you cash, you're not obligated to give me your item. And therefore, you're allowed to back out. But even when you're allowed to back out, bidin, there's a higher level. And that's called being oimed bidiburai, standing by your word. And when you do not stand by your word, you get a curse called a misha bara, a curse from Hashem. Whoever has the money, he has the upper hand. And we'll see in the Gemara what exactly that means. So we begin, the Gemara says, 10 lines from the end of the Amen Masnisan Lei. Rebbe the Rav Shimon Brei, Rebbe taught his son, Hazav koine esa kesef. Amar Lai, so Rav Shimon responded back to Rebbe, which was his father, Shanis lanu biyaldusech. You taught us when we were younger, kesef koine es hazav. The opposite, that the kesef is koine hazav. And now you're teaching us in your old age, Hazav koines hakesef, says the Gemara. So let's understand what originally Rebbe held and what he holds right now. Again, in the Rebbe's youth, he taught that the kesef is the item that one does the meshicha and then acquires the gold. But then later on, now he's teaching Rav Shimon his son the opposite, like our Mishnah taught that the zav is koines hakesef, the meshicha on the zav acquires the silver. Says the Gemara, 3 lines to the bottom, Yaldusa savar tahava dechashiv have teva. Gold, which is more valuable, is considered the coin, the money. Kasma delo chashiv have peri. And therefore, as we spoke out in the Mishnah, by doing the meshicha, doing the act of acquisition on the merchandise, on the peri, you're obligated to pay the kesef, the money, which he thought was the gold. V'kanule peri letiva. But beziknusa savar, what happened in the Rebbe's old age? He held kaspa. When it comes to money, techarif literally means it's sharp. What does it mean that it's sharp? So you look at the top Rashi. Rashi speaks out. What this means is yoytze bahitza va'iver l'seicher. Those words, over the seicher, are really critical words in Rashi. What that means is that the coin is an item that is easily spent. Techarif, therefore have teva. Hava, when it comes to gold in the top line of Memdal and Mebeis, to loy charif have peri, v'kanale peri l'teva. And now this is really defining what is money, which is very important, as we're seeing over here, and as we'll see further, that the money is the item that's obligated to be paid for the peri. So we're seeing over here, says Rabbi Biziknusa, it all has to do with which is more charif, which is over l'seicher, which could be utilized in transactions in business. And this is the reason, not to jump the gun, but this is the reason why, for example, American currency is considered generally over l'seicher. Anywhere in the world, you take out a dollar bill, you could pay with it. And that's not necessarily true with other currencies. You take out a 10 shekel here at a pizza store, they're not going to take it. But $10 in the pizza store in Eretz Yisrael, they would take. And that means that the American dollar is always going to be considered the kasef. Why? Because it's charif. Because it's over le-seicher. Says the Gemara, Rav Ashi. Says Rav Ashi. So again, that was Rabbi Bialdus and Rabbi Ziknusa. Says Rav Ashi, I hold Kialdusei. I hold, like you said in your youth, that all has to do with which is more chashiv. Mistavrim, the Tanya and the Cheshes koines kesef, because what did the Mishnah say that copper is koine kesef? Suyam b'shlam kasel gabi dava peri ave hainu katani. That's what the Mishnah says. And the Cheshes koines kesef. Ta'afal pi till gabi dava peri havai. Even though with regard to gold it's considered the peri, legabi necheshes regarding to copper tiva havi. However, what's the kasha? And that's why necheshes is koine as a kesef, because the silver with regard to copper is a coin. Whereas if you're going to tell me silver with relation to gold is the coin, Amrit tiva ve ligami the choishes the iu choshev the iu charif mi bai. Why would you have to teach me the din by nechoshes? So Subs long Rav Ashi, and he says I could associate and understand Rebbe Bialdusa better, that has to do with chashivos, and that would be the chiddush of the second case of the Mishnah of nechoshes koine es hakesef. And that would be the reason why, even though silver in its relationship to gold, but, and therefore it taught me that Nechoshes is koine es hakesef. Says the Gemara, but if it was all about charifos, its ability to be spent, what's the difference? Silver with relationship to gold, silver in relationship to copper. Answers the Gemara, no raya, it's terich. Sal mean I would have thought hani priti the asra disagi, the copper coins in a place where they're in circulation. Enu charifi tvei kaspa. I would have thought that the copper is more charif, is more expendable, is more a coin than silver, and therefore I would have thought ema tiva havai. And therefore, I would have thought that nechoshes is not koines hakasef. I would have thought if you do Mashiach on nechoshes, it doesn't work. Why? Because the nechoshes is really the tiva, is the coin. Kamash blan kivdi gedochti deloy sagebei. Since there are other places that the copper is not able to be spent, therefore the chiddush of the Mishnah is peri have, and therefore concludes the Gemara that even though Rav Ashi thought he had a raya, Rebbe Bialdusa, that has to do with chashivos, says the Gemara, no, it has to do like ziknusa, charifos, oiver l'soicher. Says the Gemara, va'af Rav Chia, savar da'avotivavi. Rav Chia held that gold could be considered a coin, and therefore that would be a problem, because in our Mishnah, what was gold? Gold was the peri. Tivave, the Rav, and again, this was only going to work like Rabbi Biyal Dusa. The Rav Oisef Dinari Mibrate. Rav borrowed gold from Rav Chia's daughter, of the Rav Chia. L'soiv Yakar Dinri. Gold went up in value. Asla Kabed Rav Chia comes to Rav Chia. Amar Leizel Shlimli. Please pay me Tavinu Tekilin, good and full weight coins. Says the Gemara now. If gold is considered the teva, is considered the money, not the peirin, everything makes sense. If it's considered the peri, it should be considered like lending one item for the next, which is forbidden. Bisa is the basic premise of all of ribis, which is that if I lend an item and the item goes up or goes down in value, I'm not allowed to pay back that same item. Why? Because by paying back the item, you could potentially be giving ribis. So says the Gemara, if you're going to say that gold is peri, comes out that how was Rav Chia allowed to do this story? He was taking ribis. Answers the Gemara, Rav dinare havalei v'kivan de'avlei dinare nase kaimer loi halveni achava b'ni hachamsem avteach. And this is going to be a yisaid, a rule that we're going to come back to, that any time you have some of the gold coins in your own possession, then you're able to make it as if that you're making the halva on that, and therefore that's a way to circumvent the issue of sabasa, the issue of ribis. Again, we'll explain this more further in its place. Amar Rava, continues the Gemara, Rismak in the middle of the Amar, the first line is Shiavai Bini. Amar Rava, Haitana Zavar Dava Tivavi. And again, let's just remind ourselves. According to Rebbe Bialdusa, comes out that gold is a coin. The whole Mishnah has to flip. Kesef is coin es azav, not zav coin es a kesef. According to that, we have the Mishnah, azav coin es a kesef. Why? According to the way we have the Mishnah, it doesn't have to do with which is more valuable, but rather which is easier to spend. Says the Gemara, Rava held like Rebbe Bialdusa in his youth, which is what? Gold is considered a tiva. Gold is considered a coin, not the peri. Titania. Pruta shamru echad mishvanim isri italki. When we said a pruta, it's 1/8 of an Italian coin. Lamanaf kamina. Lekadusha isha. To be makadesh a woman. Isser, the coin called an Isser, is Echad Meser V'Arav Dinar Shel Kesef, a 24th of a dinner of Kesef, L'maynaf Kamina, L'mekach L'memker. Dinar Shel Kesef is Echad Meser V'Chamisha, B'Dinar Shel Zav, 1/25 of a golden coin, L'maynaf Kamina, L'bin Dinar Ben. So now articulates the Gemara the Raya. Amri Bishlam, if you're going to tell me Tivave, if you're going to tell me that gold is considered a coin, not like our Mishnah, like Rebbe in his youth, Mishayer, then it makes a lot of sense. Mishayer Tana b'midi dekayitz. That the Tana was Mishayer, utilized as the barometer, something which is a steady value. Aliyamr Peri Avi, but if gold is the merchandise and there's no set value, Mishayer Tani b'midi de'ikr v'zol. The Tana is going to give a raya with something that fluctuates in value per merchandise. Zimnin demahadle kana, zimnin demaisivle. Sometimes the coin's going to get more. Sometimes he's going to have to return, Sometimes he's going to get too much. So proves the Gemara that we have to say that gold is indeed tiva. It's considered a coin in its relationship to silver, like Rebbe Bialdusa, not like our Mishnah. Tinan Halsam. So continues the Gemara with another Mishnah as a raya. We learned in a Mishnah. Beishame Oimrim, this Mishnah we're going to conclude for today. Beishame Oimrim, says Beishame, Lo yas adam slayim dinrei zav, don't make your slayim into golden dinar. You cannot redeem meiser sheni with gold. Beisil says you're allowed to matirim. One says, what's the machlokes? That you're taking silver slayim of meiser sheni and transferring it onto gold. Tivishame savri mamish arsugya kasva, silver is the tiva, is the coin of dava peri v'tiva peri. Says Beishame lo mechalalina. When it comes to meiser sheni, you cannot change coins into merchandise. You can change merchandise into coins to bring it up to Yerushalayim. Beisel savri, that was the kisva peri dava tiva. Peri tiva mechalinan. So again, that's when it came to silver and gold. So what do we see? We see that the Rebbe Bialdusa was like Beis Hillel. Avol Peira is al dinarim divrei akol machalinan. My time, what's the reason? Midavei kesef leBeis Hillel, kesef leBeis Hillel. Avgav the kesef legabe dava peri have. But yet legabe peri, of course, is going to be tiva. Zahav nami leBeishami. When it comes to gold, afal gav the dav legabe kasva, says Beishami is peri ave, but legabe peri tive ave. Meaning, everyone will agree with regard to actual peiros that the money is going to be called cash, and therefore you could transfer the sanctity of the fruit onto the cash when it comes to meiser sheni. Another man number holds even peiros al dinarim is going to be a machlokes. And then we're gonna pause over here. Actually, no, let's go two more lines. Why was it that the case listed? You would have thought it's only in that case. So Kamash Milan that we said that case. So it comes out that we have a raya or two to Rebbe Bialdusa, not like our Mishnah, that gold at this point, it would be considered a kesef. It would be considered the cash currency and not the pay rice like we learned in our Mishnah. We'll pick it up from here. B'siyata dishmaya.